Inspiring Change is the beginning of a collection of interviews and stories of creative people. I've always been fascinated by what makes people follow through with their creative ideas, hang on to those sparks of ideas, and follow through all the way to the final stages. The inspiration to start this collection of interviews and stories came from Chris Walton, who sadly no longer is with us. He was passionate and inspirational in the way he followed through with his creation of the eco-village, all the way through into every minute detail. The message he gave to me was like, whatever you want to do, give it a really good go. So I'm following his advice. The purpose of the collection of these stories and interviews is to inspire other people to follow their own creativity and maybe see a little bit of themselves mirrored in one or the other interview or story and go like, oh, I could do something like this. This is a little bit like me. Inspiring change.
I don't peer inside the black box, so to speak. I know how it manifests itself in my life because I see the things that I produce, but as to how I get to that point, like many creative people probably have little idea, and perhaps we don't even want to know too much about how it works, what goes on inside the black box. What's important for me is to express that which is going on somewhere else, wherever it may be coming from. So, yeah. As I say, I'm a bit of an end user when it comes to creativity. Quite often I tend to think of creative expression as being something like kinesthetic thinking. It's actually thinking by doing things, by interacting, by engaging materially. And quite often what's happening out here is happening before something's happening in here. Now there may be some kind of feeling that you have about something, but you don't actually bring it into existence, if you like, until you start engaging with the world in some way, kinesthetically, generally just by manipulating something, moving your body, by uttering. These things are all actions, so forth, but they don't necessarily flow from ideas. They are the essences of ideas, which then cause things to happen inside your brain, which then sets up this kind of circular thing as you're going along, as you're taking in perceptions of what you're doing. Your mind is processing that very intuitively and organically, I have to say, and very rapidly, and then passing it out again, so this whole thing sets up. But I wouldn't necessarily say I begin with a particular idea and then try to follow it through to some sort of action.
So it sounds like it's almost like a conversation by doing and engaging with the material.
Absolutely.
That is kind of like how things evolve.
It is an inner conversation. In that process, what's inside and how it manifests outside become to some extent unified, if you know what I mean. So there's no subjectivity and objectivity in the picture anymore. It is just all one flow. I don't necessarily see the creative process as a directional, outcome-oriented thing. It is just a state of being. My creative process is like, if this doesn't sound too high-minded, it's like wind. We don't pay much attention to it, but then a gentle breeze might stir up and we become aware of something. And it's just a gentle heightened sensibility. I, like many creative people, live in the kind of like the gentle breeze or end of the spectrum. We have a generally heightened sensibility towards sense impressions, what goes on around us, to our own feelings about that heightened sensibility in terms of our own body reactions, our own emotions, and to what's out there. There are no specific beginnings and endings. There are kind of like sparks of things happening here and there, and sometimes a few of them whip up into something else.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the photographs that you've taken?
Well, my photography, as I said, is very much based on immediate sense impressions, And what I like about photography is that it's the medium which most closely mirrors my day-to-day ongoing sensibilities about the world around me. All the time I'm in this gentle breeze of looking at there and looking there and seeing patterns and seeing particularly patterns and spatial associations between things which just spark little neurons in my mind. That's the kind of person that I am. A lot of my photography is geared around making use of these small ephemeral effects of light and pattern and shade and turning them into something meaningful. And you did mention the particular image in the shower. I was just taking a shower one cold winter's morning, and the cold air and the steam were creating shifting patterns on the glass shower screen into this supernatural landscape, if you like. It looked like the Nile Delta or something. I see. So a whole landscape, a whole universe seen in bird's eye perspective was created just in this fraction of a second. Taking a shower one morning, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. Basically, the kinds of things which people wouldn't normally think about recording or looking at in any great detail. But I guess to some extent I am a bit obsessive in terms of detail and seeing small patterns and so forth. And that's I use photography as a way of working through those kinds of things, and I find that very appealing. Oil paint, I like to work on a large scale. I like there to be a very strong physical presence about the thing that I'm working with, the kind of like my mirror, if you like, the canvas as my mirror. And the bigger canvas gives me broader rein to move around. The whole idea is to use gesture as a way of creating an idea about the material world without it being a real representation of the world. And it's almost, in some sense, a gestural dance. It's kind of like dancing the universe into creation.
What's been your biggest, or what is your biggest challenge in your creativity?
Perfectionism.
Say more.
I'm an arch perfectionist. I have a very active, rational, analytical side to me, which comes out much more in my non-fiction writing, my academic writing, and I try to guard against that when I'm more in intuitive mode. But having been through an intuitive creative process, quite often the natural tendency is for the logico-deductive rational side to kick in and to overpower. And so I do think that's a challenge for me.
Do you have a message for people out there who maybe are struggling with their creativity?
Keep at it. Don't be afraid of the struggle. Don't be focused on outcomes. Don't be focused on what anyone else will think about it. At the end of the day, all that matters is what you think about what you're doing, how it's making you feel, what you're experiencing, what you're learning from it, if you actually see it as a learning process, what you are learning from it. If it's making you feel something in the world, it's a good thing. It doesn't necessarily have to make you feel great. It doesn't have to be an aesthetic object. People don't have to look at what you've done and say that's beautiful. If you want to show your work to people and they say, oh, that makes me very confronted, I find that difficult to deal with, that's fine, that's their thing. But you're having an effect, firstly on yourself and on other people. You're making them think, you're making them feel. Then you need to keep going with it, accept the struggles, accept wherever it leads you, and just go with it and be honest. That's all I can say about that.